and welcome to this presentation about our latest Widows for Peace Through Democracy dossier. This downloadable PowerPoint presentation, introducing Widows for Peace Through Democracy's dossier, Widows Speak Out, is an adaptable communications tool. It's designed to be used by our partner organisations and others promoting widows' rights worldwide, which is why it's fronted by this optional blank slide that can be customised for presentations by our own organisation, country or region. Our 2020 WPD dossier has been recently submitted as evidence and circulated to the UN Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW. Its full title is Widows Speak Out, Abuse and Discrimination, Resilience and Agency, and its findings are summarised in this PowerPoint. Although testimonies were requested from more than 100 organisations and 90 professional contacts working with widows worldwide, special attention has been given to evidence from countries and geographical regions where widow discrimination is widespread. Cases included are from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Colombia, Democratic Republic of Congo, India, Iraq, Kenya, Kosovo, Myanmar, Nepal, Nigeria and Pakistan. The individual widowhood discrimination testimonies are in bespoke sections, each illustrating a specific category of discrimination, correlated with relevant articles of the CEDAW Convention. Stigma and discrimination against widows of all ages occurs across a wide spectrum of cultures, religions and ethnic groups worldwide. Widows of all ages are denied education, financial services, social protection, land and housing, and legal redress and access to justice. Widows suffering deprivation of assets are forced into destitution, creating further generations of disadvantage and poverty. And an unprecedented increase in widow numbers has been caused by armed conflicts, migration, child marriage, disease, and now COVID-19. Although in 2015, UN census data reported 258 million widows globally and 38 million in extreme poverty, in 2021, numbers will be much higher. Followed by Widows for Peace Through Democracy's recommendations, 20 recent case testimonies are presented with a context of up-to-the-minute evidence relating to each widow's geographical region, extensively researched from official reports, news articles, and personal communications from NGOs and state actors. Securing ownership of assets, particularly property, is often the greatest factor in protecting widows from poverty. But in many countries, adherence to traditional laws results in the loss of widows' rights. Although CEDAW articles make it clear that widows must not be discriminated against in international law, multiple factors make widows unable to access the justice system, even where legislation already exists. In many countries, widowhood is associated with stigma, often perpetuated by harmful customary practices, HDPs, as well as by traditional restrictions on dress, diet, and social mobility. This section of the dossier includes evidence of the shocking, systematic, and institutionalized use of sexual violence to which both Rohingya widows and the female population of Kosovo has been subjected. Young widows are less able to assert inheritance rights or custody rights over any children, and may be seen as readily available for sexual relations. This makes them more vulnerable than older widows to harmful customary practices and exploitation. Despite the 2000 UN Security Council resolution, UNSCR 1325, WPD research found that the plight of widows in conflict and post-conflict situations exponentially worsening, with sexual and gender-based violence persisting even after conflict had ended, and very few widows subsequently receiving financial support from their own governments. Enforced disappearance is now classified as a crime against humanity. WPD President Margaret Owen has been a trailblazer for half widows, particularly in Kashmir. Our dossier also provides evidence of the desperate situation of half widows in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Colombia, Iraq, and Myanmar. Today we have speakers to share a little bit more about the situation in both Kashmir and Iraq. In many situations, a widow is forced to remarry not by choice, but merely in order to survive, with inherited widows facing both psychological and physical abuse. Discrimination against older widows, often harmful and violent, is widespread, with older widows more vulnerable than younger ones to theft of finance and property, physical and verbal abuse, and even subjected to accusations of witchcraft. It should be noted that there is a lack of current global age disaggregated data on widowhood after age 64. Unacceptable discrimination against disabled widows is still widespread globally. WPD advocates for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities to have specific mention of widows. There is also a lack of data on widows of any age with disabilities. On this slide, you'll see the case of disabled widow Grace, whose family and community refused to acknowledge her socially, even though she was disabled. Even her own son was complicit in ostracizing her from the community, not only because she was in a wheelchair, but because she was a widow. The dossier highlights the pressing need for widows to have a collective voice in order to achieve the aims of the CEDAW articles, and for the gathering and analysis of disaggregated data for the numbers and ages of widows to be a priority for all states parties. In particular, it is critical we gather data on widows and COVID-19 going forward. We are working with our Widows for Peace Through Democracy partners to gather data on widows and COVID-19. WPD's recommendations for accelerating widows' rights globally include the development of a CEDAW General Recommendation on Widows, the establishment of a UN independent expert on widows, and implementation of a UN Human Rights Council resolution on widows. Our recommendations also speak to the importance of linking action on widows for the achievement of the SDGs. For example, Sustainable Development Goals 1, 5, 6, 8, 10, 16, and 17. Here are a few notes on how the dossier was compiled, its authorship, and grateful thanks to everyone who contributed evidence, and to the Network for Social Change and the Robbins Family Trust. In addition to being able to download our dossier online, you'll be able to download the PowerPoint presentation you can see today from our WP website. Both can be used, and indeed we hope you will use both for advocacy purposes in your own country. Thank you very much.